Hey there! In this video, we'll talk about interceptions from the ABP framework. Generally, interceptions provide a flexible approach for adding new behaviors to an object at runtime, which is what we're usually dealing with when working with cross-cutting concerns, such as security, monitoring, and logging. And that's where aspect-oriented programming comes in, which addresses one of these cross-cutting concerns. ABP already uses the Castle Core library in the background, and it is pre-configured. It creates an abstraction on top of it, with these classes and interfaces. The ABP Interceptor interface and the class that both have the intercept async method, which passes in an object of the ABP method invocation. That's got all the arguments and properties and the proceed async method. Interception may decrease performance, so for controllers and Razor pages, we do not use them. They use middlewares in action and page filters instead. If we want to ignore some specific types from not being included in the interception, we'll be using the dynamic proxy ignore types class. And as for the proxy helper, if the given object is a proxy object, then it returns a dynamic proxy target object. Otherwise, it returns the same object. And it supports Castle dynamic proxies. It of course causes the interference during runtime. We can intercept any method as long as it's coming from an interface. However, if it's coming from a class, then it must be virtual. And how do we hook an interception to a class? We'll do that on the service registration. And let's see how it works and how to configure it. Alright, so we're using the sample Mongo app that we've used in previous videos, and in the application layer, I've created the interception folder right here and added all of these classes. And we're going to be focusing on logging in this video. We first created an attribute and we called it the watcher attribute. It is going to be used for either methods or classes. And it's got these two properties, the isDisabled and the timeout. And so in the constructor, we've defined the seconds to be 5 and the minutes and hours are 0, which is holding the timeout property right here. And so if the watcher attribute is enabled, then this one's going to be false. And if it is disabled, then it's going to be true. Next up, we're using the watcher helper class. And it's got the first method right here that's going to check for either the method or the class to see if it's got the watcher attribute right here and right here. And if there is any watcher attribute, then it's going to enable it. And if it couldn't find it in the method, then it's going to look in the class. And if there is a watcher attribute, then it's going to do the same thing. And if it did not find it, then it's going to return false. And then we've got this small method that takes the method info and looks for the watcher attribute. And if it is defined, then it's going to set it to true, and the watcher attribute will be enabled. And then this method right here, which takes the whole implementation of the class and then applies this method to look for the watcher attribute. And then we've got this bigger method that implements both small methods. And we'll be using it later on. And right here we've got the interceptor. It's deriving the ABP Interceptor class and implementing the iTransient dependency for service registration and injecting the iLogger. If the property is disabled, then it's just going to proceed without logging anything, and it's just going to return. However, if it's enabled, then it's not going to get into this, and instead it's going to start with this. We're going to count our start time, and then trigger the proceed async, and then calculate the difference between the start time and the end time. And if the time difference is bigger than the watcher attribute timeout that we said right here, that we set it, then it's going to log the warning. The method execution time took longer than expected. Expected time is this, and the elapsed time is this. And we're going to print the declaration type and the method name, and the watcher attribute timeout. Right here we've got the app service, and we've got 4 methods. We're setting the watcher attribute for 2 seconds, and we're setting method 1 randomly between 1.8 and 2.2 seconds. This is for the whole class. However, for this method, we're overriding the attribute, and we're checking it for 1 second, and randomly running it between 0.8 seconds and 1.2 seconds. For method 3, we are disabling the property, and this one is between 2.5 seconds and 3 seconds randomly, which should actually trigger the warning because it is bigger than 2 all the time. However, because it is disabled, we'll see how it acts. And as you might have noticed, all of these class methods are virtual, so they should be working. But for method 4, it shouldn't work because it's not virtual. And you can see it is randomly between 1 second and 1.5 seconds, whereas the watcher is 1. And then we're going to try the interface. We've defined the interface right here somewhere in the iWatcher app service, and we're injecting it in this controller right here, and then we applied method 4 async again. But it is commented out right now because we want to try this one first. And right here we've created the Watcher Interceptor Registerer class, with this method filtering the dynamic proxy ignore types with this simple method that takes the type and filters it from the contents of the dynamic proxy ignore types that we talked about. And so anything that the dynamic proxy ignore types contain shouldn't be included, and applying the isWatcher type method that we've defined right here. That's using this method and this method. We're looking for the watcher attribute right here. And then we're using this method right here inside of the register if needed method that takes the context of the iOnService register, which passes the iOnService registered context. It filters it, and if it finds the watcher attribute, then it adds it. And this method is actually used when registering right here in the module class of the application layer, right here. Now let us debug and see. We can check for the first method first, which is between 1.8 seconds and 2.2 seconds. Let's try it out. Randomly 1.8. Let's execute again. Alright, now it's more than 2. And we can see it in the warning right here. Method execution time took longer than expected. Expected time is this, and the elapsed time is this. And as for method 2, we are overriding the watcher attribute to 1 second and generating the time between 0.8 and 1.2 seconds. And so if it gets higher than 1 second, we should see a warning. Let's try it out and see. Oh, already higher than 1 second. And we can see it right here, the complete namespace with the class and the method name, method 2. Execution time took longer than expected. Expected time is this, and the elapsed time is this. And for method 3, we are disabling the attribute, and it should be more than 2. Let's try it out. And you can see it's not even returning anything. Since, yeah, we did not return anything, however, we cannot even see it anywhere in the logger. Whereas we can see that it's actually been executed, but the watcher attribute is disabled. And as for method 4, it should trigger the watcher, however, it's not virtual, and we are in a class, so since it's not virtual, it's not gonna cause an interception. Let us try it. Same thing. It has been executed, but we cannot see any warnings. If I get back to the controller that applies the interface, and I uncomment this method, and just apply method 4. We can see it right here. Since it doesn't return anything, we cannot see it, but it should trigger the warning. And we can see it. The method execution time took longer than expected. Expected time is 1 second, and the elapsed time is 1.45 seconds. Since we're using the interface right here. Interfaces cause interceptions. This has been the Interceptors from the ABP Framework. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.